You're listening to the Rise Above podcast, the only podcast on the planet with a mission to help you live a free and uncommon life. Here's your host, Greg Smith.
Welcome. Let me first just say thank you for being here. I am so glad that you decided to join me today. I believe if you desire true freedom in business and in life, it starts with creating a champion's mindset from within. And so today's episode is a very special episode to me. It is episode number 1. And I am so excited for today's topic, which is me being a procrastinator. The fact is, that's the title of the show today is I'm a procrastinator. And many of you may be too. And that's okay. I'm going to tell you some different things. I'm going to give you 3 tips that have helped me overcome that. And most importantly, start getting results. You know, this podcast, as a clear example, is actually one of those things. My wife and I joke that I am naturally what we call a 90%er. I am somebody who will gear up and start to strategize until you come up with the perfect plan, and then ultimately you never execute the plan. Or you might work on a project and you get so close to actually setting it forth and executing it that you stop and you have a roadblock. And this podcast was one of them. I'll tell you, when I originally got this idea, it was about 5 years ago. Podcasts had just come onto the scene, or at least on my scene. And I had this idea that I wanted to do a podcast. I thought, this is going to be great. And it was going to be great. I thought about it. And by the time I took action on it, my motivation was gone and I set it aside. And it was many years later, which is now, where something finally got in me that said, you need to do this podcast. And finally, through a series of events, I decided to do it. And over the past 9 months to a year, I have really come to learn a new affirmation for myself. And that affirmation is this: do it now. That you just have to do things now. And you got to do them in the moment. You got to do them when you're excited. You know, right now it's 11:49 at night for me as I'm recording this. And I'm recording it because I'm energized right now to do it. The natural in me wanted to continue to wait until there was this perfect time. And frankly, there's never a perfect time. And so going back to starting this podcast, originally I thought there was going to be this perfect time. And finally I said, do it now. And I decided to do it. And I ended up getting my intro all done, that you just heard. I got my iTunes album cover created. I created my content vault, as we say here. And I really became up with the topics that I'm going to share, what it is that I'm going to share. I came up with everything. I had everything lined up. And the day came when my producer said, Greg, it's time to start recording. And I'm like, awesome. And for some reason, for about a week and a half, I kept finding a reason not to record. And it just kept coming up. And I'll tell you, over that week and a half, I started getting so stressed out. And that's part of my message today. I started getting so stressed out. And I see it so often with many people, where there's things that you have that are undone. They're not complete. And it weighs on you more if they're incomplete than if it was completed. And this podcast, or this first episode, is a very clear example of that. And so finally, I'm on a walk today. I'm out in the woods and I'm just like, it is time. And the real reason that I want to share with you, the real reason that I didn't take action, analyzing it for the week and a half. And this is really what I've come to learn of people. People naturally avoid pain and seek pleasure. That is the natural tendency in us as humans, is to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And so we have this idea, and what I was seeking really wasn't pleasure, but I was avoiding pain. And it's the pain that when you finally do whatever it is that you want to do, there's a pain that potentially could come if you find out that you fail at it in business and in life, in those things and those risks and those adventures that we want to go on. The reason a lot of times that we don't do it in the end, we can talk about it, we can learn about it, we can strategize about it, and we can theorize about how awesome it's going to be if we ever do it. But the fact is, a lot of times we're scared of what will actually come of it. Will I fail? Will people listen? Will I be a success? Will people make fun of me? What's going to happen? How are people going to perceive me? And so fear many times holds us back from greatness. And it's this fear that causes us to take the action that would help break us through to the other side. I think about a really good friend of mine. His name is Caleb, and Caleb is a great guy. Met him through jujitsu, and he and I, you're only as good as your training partner. And I realized that in wrestling many, many years ago, and through coaching wrestling as well. And so you will rise to the level of your partner. And so I picked Caleb out in the early years, and he became my partner in jiu-jitsu in the early years of me doing it. And we became great friends. And so Caleb has a very, very well-paying job, does exceptional in what he does, and he's very smart with money. And he wants to, like everybody, create a life of freedom and a life of true financial freedom where you have money coming in, true cash flow coming in, either through investments or an active business or something that you're doing where money is flowing because of an asset that you created. And Caleb has spent a long time thinking about it. And we had a conversation just the other day, and I finally just said, Caleb, you have to take action. Like, you have to get in the game. Right now, you aren't even in the game. You think you're in the game because you're reading about it, strategizing about it, but at some point, you have to get out there and make things happen. And I relate it to jujitsu, or if you like to play tennis, it could be tennis, or hunting. I love hunting. It could be any of these things where you can become this little sideline expert, but it's until you go out and you actually do, right? You actually do something with it. You learn that maybe what you read isn't necessarily 100% true, or maybe it's true for other people, but not necessarily the way that you would do it. And it's by applying and getting real world experience that you can start to get results, and you can start to tweak things, and you can start to adjust. And the key is, when you start to take that action, if you do have a failure, it's not a failure. You learn from it and you pivot and you correct it, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and you do it again. And so, I think many times, and I can relate to Caleb, this is why we're great friends, is because many times we're waiting for this perfect opportunity or this perfect security blanket that or permission that says, if you do this, you're going to be successful.
Are you someone who wants to live life on your own terms? Do you dream of having more time to spend doing the things you love? Then download your copy of The Freedom Formula absolutely free at www.riseabovepodcast.com. What are you waiting for? Go to www.riseabovepodcast.com to get your free copy of The Freedom Formula.
There is no guarantee in life, folks. There is no guarantee. I'm telling you right now, there's no guarantee, but many times before we take action, we want this guarantee. We want to know it's going to work. And so because we don't have that, many times somebody like myself will not do anything at all. And in the end, the fear of regret or the looking back on what I did or didn't do ultimately is a worse pain than if I actually did it and failed. At least if I put myself on the field and I put myself out there and I do something, I can look back and say, I gave it my all. I gave it my best effort. I did something. But if we sit around and we think too much, and we never apply, then how are we to expect a result? You can't. You cannot expect a result unless you're willing to take action on something. So I've come up with this affirmation of just do it now. I'm telling you right now that the best thing you can do if you relate to this at all, if you procrastinate at all, like I do still today, but I'm overcoming it, is have an affirmation of just doing it now, and create little consistencies of doing things now. As an example, if you go by the trash can and the trash needs taken out, do it now. If you're taking clothes off of a hanger in your closet and you're putting that hanger back in the same spot so that your wife has to go through and find it if she's putting your clothes away, or maybe you're single and you put your own clothes away, it would be more efficient if you just did it now and you took that hanger and you put it in literally what we call the empty hanger spot where we know exactly where to find them. So, how you do one thing is how you do all things. I heard that many, many years ago. I've been an entrepreneur for 11 years. I've helped other entrepreneurs for over 11 years. I run an 8-figure health and wellness consulting company, and I've learned that human tendency is to hold off on something. It's to seek pleasure and avoid pain, one or the other or both. And many times we're so busy trying to avoid pain that we never get to experience pleasure because the pain nags you, just like not doing this podcast for my first episode here for the past week and a half has pained me. And I didn't even know it. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't really know it, how much it was really affecting me. But I'm here to tell you that analyzing and looking back through, I journal and I document and I make sure, because I believe a life worth living is a life worth recording. And I am creating a legacy for me and my family. And so looking back over the last, week and a half, I can see patterns. And the patterns are there because I was putting off something. And I'll tell you this on this subject, that many times when you are about to break through to greatness, there are forces that try to hold you back. I really believe that. If that's people that are in your inner circle right now, I had that many moons ago when I started down this route of being an entrepreneur. I had people that wanted to hold me back, but I believe there's other forces at play. And I think when we have something important that needs to be done, that is really going to make a difference in the world, in somebody else's life, in your life, in your family's life, I believe there's this law of nature that starts to press against you and put pressure against you, and more pressure and more pressure and more pressure. And ultimately it tests you. I think it's testing you to say, how bad do you really want to do it? Are you going to do it? Or are you going to just talk about it? Or are you going to do it? How bad do you really want it? Because it's going to be a journey. It's not going to be easy, but you have to take action. So I believe nature starts to test you. And through that test, you have to figure out if you're going to break through or not. And by breaking through, I think many times you have your greatest achievements in life. You have your greatest breakthroughs in life. Sometimes you may have your greatest failures in life, but those failures will teach you what not to do next time or how to do something better. And so I want to encourage you to start taking action on something today, something that has been on your heart, something that has been an idea, something that you've thought about for the last 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, maybe multiple years, like I have for this very podcast. I've been doing this very same thing for the people and the other business owners and consultants that I work with. I've been doing this for many years behind the scenes. But to put myself out publicly has been very scary. And that's what's been holding me back. So maybe you have something like that has been on your heart, something that you want to do, something that maybe you're afraid you might fail. I want to encourage you to start doing things now. Start taking actions now, today, to move in that direction. You never know. I do not want to look back at my life and have regrets on what I wish I would have done. And I don't want you to have those either. And so take action today. Maybe you need to write, do it now on your mirror so you see it every morning when you wake up and it starts to get ingrained in your brain. Or maybe you put do it now as your new slogan, as your phone screensaver. Whatever it is, start learning to take action immediately before the motivation wears off, before the negativity kicks in, before you can talk yourself out of it. We far too often, we talk ourselves out of things. And that can be a problem because, if I'm talking truthfully, I don't know if I'm the best person I should be listening to all the time. It's very easy because sometimes it's fear that's talking. It's not really me. It's not my hopes and dreams. So I encourage you today, take action on something or start moving in the direction and do it now for something that has been tugging and pulling at you for a long time. Do not wait a year. Do not wait 2 years or 3 years or 4 years and look back and wish you would have. Take action today. And so with that said, I want to thank you so much for listening today to this episode. And I want to ask you a favor. If you got value out of today's podcast, I would love to know. I would love to know exactly what it was that you got value out of. Like, what is that nugget that you're going to take and you're going to apply? Because knowledge without action is dead. And so I want to know what you're going to apply. And one of the ways that you can do that is you can hop on over and you can give me a review on iTunes. And most importantly, what I'm not looking for are just, 4 stars or 5 stars. What I'd really love is a comment that tells me what you like, or maybe you didn't like it at all, but I'm assuming if you listened this far, you probably liked it. And if that's the case, I would love to know exactly what it was that you liked. And I'll tell you, coming up next time on episode number 2, I'm going to talk about voices in your head and ultimately the number one voice that you hear the most and how that applies to success. So until next time, take care. God bless.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.